Let me tell you a story, a long, winding tale of betrayal, heartache, mystery, and ultimately, redemption. It is the story of Liana, a woman whose allure and enigmatic nature hid secrets so deep they would one day shatter a family's perfect facade. I remember the first time I truly noticed Liana, not merely as a graceful figure in our family gatherings, but as a woman whose eyes seemed to harbor hidden storms. In our close-knit family, one where every smile and every word was shared with a sense of trust and belonging, Liana's presence was at once captivating and unsettling. She possessed a charm that made her seem almost otherworldly. Her smile could light up the darkest corners of a room, yet behind that smile lay a glimmer of sorrow and mischief that none of us could quite decipher. Liana was married to my dear brother, Daniel, a kind, gentle soul who always put family before himself. Daniel had fallen in love with her at first sight, entranced by her beauty and the air of mystery that surrounded her. In the beginning, everything appeared perfect. She was the ideal partner, graceful, poised, and seemingly devoted. But as time went by, subtle signs began to emerge. Small inconsistencies in her stories, a hesitancy in her laughter, and fleeting glances at the door during family gatherings. At first, these signs were brushed off as quirks of a reserved personality, but gradually, they became a source of quiet unease. I began to notice that while Daniel's eyes shone with unwavering trust, Liana's sometimes betrayed a troubled soul, one that seemed perpetually on the edge of secrets too heavy to bear. It started with little things, a late-night phone call here, an unexplained absence there. I remember one summer evening, when the warm air was filled with the sound of cicadas and the soft murmur of conversation at one of our family barbecues, I caught sight of Liana whispering intently into her phone. Her eyes darted around as if she were expecting someone, and her smile, usually so radiant, was now tinged with a hint of something else, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. Daniel, ever so loving and trusting, dismissed it as nothing more than a momentary lapse in attention. But the seed of doubt had already been planted in the minds of those who cared to look a little closer. As weeks turned into months, the whispers began to grow louder. A casual remark here, a furtive glance there, each one weaving together a tapestry of suspicion that none of us could ignore. I recall a particular autumn day when the crisp air carried with it an unsettling chill that seemed to echo the growing tension in our home. It was then that I overheard a conversation, a hushed, urgent dialogue that revealed far more than I had ever imagined. I had been passing by the corridor in our family home when I heard Liana's voice, low and trembling, as she spoke words that hinted at forbidden liaisons and secrets too dangerous to reveal. My heart sank as I realized that the woman we had all come to love and admire was living a double life. The truth, when it finally emerged, hit us like a tempest. It was during one of our family dinners, a gathering that had always been a celebration of unity, that the unthinkable happened. The warm glow of candlelight, the familiar clinking of glasses, and the gentle hum of conversation provided a stark contrast to the storm that was about to break. Daniel, with his tender eyes brimming with both confusion and hurt, confronted Liana with a tremor in his voice that no one in that room would ever forget. The silence that followed was thick with unspoken pain and disbelief. Liana's face, once so serene, contorted with anguish as she realized that the carefully constructed lies could no longer hold back the tide of truth. In a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, she confessed, not just to the physical betrayal, but to the deep-seated emptiness that had driven her to seek solace in another man. I remember that moment vividly. The tears in her eyes, the shaky breaths, and the palpable sense of remorse that filled the room. Daniel's hurt was profound, yet there was a quiet dignity in the way he listened, even as the weight of betrayal threatened to shatter him completely. The rest of the family sat in stunned silence, each of us grappling with our own mix of anger, sorrow, and disbelief. For many, the revelation was too much to bear, a rupture in the fabric of trust that had bound us together for so long. It wasn't merely a case of infidelity. It was a fracture in the very foundation of our shared life, a betrayal that reached into the heart of everything we held dear. In the days that followed, our home was transformed into a landscape of raw emotions and whispered accusations. Family gatherings, once filled with laughter and love, became minefields of tension where every glance and every word was scrutinized. I found myself drifting through these days like a ghost, caught between the lingering memories of a time when everything had seemed so simple and the stark reality of a present marred by deceit. The air was thick with an unspoken question. How could the woman we had all trusted have allowed herself to be led astray by her own inner demons? And what of Daniel, whose gentle heart now bore the scars of betrayal, a pain that resonated with every shared tear and every sorrowful look? But even in the midst of this overwhelming darkness, a subtle transformation began to take shape, one that would ultimately redefine the contours of our lives. Liana, faced with the consequences of her actions, found herself at a crossroads. The path of denial and evasion was no longer an option. The truth, harsh and unyielding, demanded that she confront the demons that had driven her to such desperate measures. What followed was a period of soul-searching and painful introspection, a journey that took her deep into the recesses of her own heart, where regret and hope waged a quiet war. I recall one particularly poignant evening when the family, still reeling from the betrayal, gathered in the living room of our old home, a place steeped in memories of happier times. The room was dimly lit by the soft glow of a single lamp, its light casting long shadows on the walls as if to echo the lingering sorrow in our hearts. It was then that Liana, with a voice heavy with remorse, began to speak. She spoke not only of her infidelities, but of the deep-seated pain and isolation that had plagued her for years. She told us of a childhood filled with neglect, of a constant struggle to be seen and heard in a world that had never quite understood her. Her words, raw and unfiltered, cut through the tension like a knife. In her confession, there was no attempt to excuse her behavior, only a sincere, if heartbreaking, acknowledgement of the mistakes she had made and the irreversible damage they had caused. For Daniel, the path to forgiveness was a long and arduous one. His love for Liana had always been deep, but now it was tinged with the bitter taste of betrayal. Yet, even as he wrestled with his own grief, there was a part of him that yearned for healing, for the possibility that, someday, the wounds of the past might mend. It was a delicate balance, one fraught with setbacks and moments of profound despair. I watched as Daniel retreated into himself, spending long hours in quiet contemplation, seeking solace in the simple beauty of sunrise or the comforting embrace of nature. There were days when the pain was almost too much to bear, when every memory of happier times was tainted by the knowledge of what had been lost. And yet, through it all, he continued to show a remarkable strength, a determination to rebuild, not just for himself, but for the sake of our entire family. Liana's journey of redemption was no less complex. The path she had chosen was one of painful self-confrontation and rigorous introspection. She began attending therapy sessions, determined to unravel the tangled threads of her past and to understand the forces that had driven her to seek validation outside of the safe embrace of our family. In those quiet sessions, away from the prying eyes of relatives and the harsh judgments of a community in shock, Liana began to confront the demons that had haunted her for so long. She spoke of feelings of inadequacy, of a deep-seated fear of never being enough, fears that had, over time, driven her to seek solace in the arms of another. Slowly, painstakingly, she began to understand that her betrayal was not simply a moral failing, but the tragic result of a lifetime of unaddressed pain and longing. I remember the subtle changes that began to emerge over time. At first, it was in the way she carried herself, a slight softening in her eyes, a hint of humility replacing the arrogance that had once defined her. Then, it was in the small gestures of contrition, a handwritten apology left on Daniel's pillow, a quiet conversation in the early morning hours when the world was still hushed and forgiving. These moments, though small, were like the first rays of dawn piercing through the darkest night. They gave us hope that perhaps, in time, the wounds might begin to heal. As the months passed, the raw, open pain of that tumultuous period gradually gave way to a tentative, fragile hope. Our family, though forever changed by the events that had transpired, began to learn the delicate art of forgiveness. It was not a swift or easy process. Each day brought with it fresh reminders of the betrayal, and there were moments when the pain seemed overwhelming. But gradually, through countless quiet conversations, shared tears, and moments of unexpected tenderness, the ties that bound us began to mend. I saw it in the way Daniel would sometimes, almost imperceptibly, squeeze Liana's hand during a family dinner, a silent acknowledgement that, despite everything, there was still a spark of the love they had once shared. During this time, our family also underwent a transformation of its own. The shock and outrage that had once defined our gatherings slowly gave way to introspection. We began to question not just the actions of one woman, but the very nature of trust, loyalty, and human frailty. There were long, heartfelt discussions late into the night as we sat around the dining table, each of us grappling with our own understanding of forgiveness and the painful process of healing. These conversations were raw and unfiltered, marked by both anger and a deep, abiding love, a love that refused to let bitterness win, even in the face of profound hurt. I, too, found myself changed by the events that had unfolded. In the quiet moments of reflection that followed the storm, I began to see that every life is a tapestry of light and shadow. Liana's actions, as hurtful as they had been, were part of a larger, more complex narrative, one that spoke of a deep, inner conflict of dreams unfulfilled and wounds unhealed. And in that recognition, I discovered a surprising compassion, a recognition that even the ones who hurt us are, in their own way, seeking to find themselves in a world that often seems indifferent to their pain. There were days when the echoes of the past would resurface, the sound of a familiar song that reminded me of better times, the sight of a flower blooming in a forgotten corner of our garden, and with it, a flood of memories both sweet and sorrowful. In those moments, the pain of betrayal mingled with the tender hope of redemption. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the family began to emerge from the long, cold winter of mistrust and heartache into the tentative warmth of spring. Liana's transformation was perhaps the most remarkable part of this journey. What had once been a woman shrouded in mystery and suspicion, whose every action seemed laced with hidden motives, gradually revealed itself as a soul yearning for change. I recall one quiet afternoon when, during one of our many family walks along a tree-lined path, Liana stopped to pick up a fallen leaf. With careful, almost reverent attention, she examined its delicate veins and vibrant color, as if seeing in a reflection of her own fragile beauty. In that moment, she confided in me, softly, as if sharing a secret too precious for the harsh light of day, about the countless hours she had spent in therapy, the nights filled with regret, and the long road she had begun to walk towards self-forgiveness. It was a moment of vulnerability that struck me to the core, a reminder that even the most wounded souls have the capacity to heal if given the chance. As time went on, the family began to see that forgiveness was not about forgetting or excusing the past, but about learning to live with it, to allow the scars of yesterday to serve as reminders of our capacity for growth and change. Daniel, with his gentle heart, eventually chose a path of cautious reconciliation, not because he had forgotten the betrayal, but because he recognized that a hold on to anger would only imprison him in a cycle of pain. His journey toward forgiveness was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, a slow, deliberate process of letting go, of making peace with the past, even as he moved forward into an uncertain future. Our family gatherings, though forever marked by the shadow of that dark chapter, gradually regained a semblance of the warmth we once knew. There were still moments of tension, of unspoken sadness that lingered in the corners of our conversations. But there was also laughter, tentative at first, then gradually more genuine, as we rediscovered the joy of togetherness. I often found myself marveling at the paradox of human nature, how a single act of betrayal could unleash such a torrent of pain, yet also serve as the catalyst for profound personal transformation and the deepening of familial bonds. Liana, now a changed woman, dedicated herself to making amends, not just through words, but through actions that spoke of genuine remorse and a commitment to change. She began volunteering at a local community center, helping others who, like her, had experienced the sting of isolation and rejection. In her quiet way, she reached out to those in need, offering a kind word, a gentle smile, and a promise that no one should have to suffer in silence. These small acts of kindness, repeated day after day, began to rebuild her reputation in the eyes of those who had once viewed her with suspicion. It was a slow process, one that required patience, perseverance, and a willingness to confront the deepest parts of oneself. But with each passing day, Liana's transformation became more evident, not just in her actions, but in the way she carried herself, with a newfound humility and strength that came only from truly facing one's own faults. As I reflect on these years, the long, winding road from betrayal to redemption, I'm struck by the many lessons that our experience has taught us. Life is rarely black and white, and often the most painful truths lead us to the most unexpected revelations about ourselves. In the end, Liana's story is not just one of infidelity and heartbreak. It is a story of growth, of the human capacity to change, and of the enduring power of forgiveness. It reminds us that even in our darkest moments, when the bonds we hold dear are threatened by the actions of those we love, there is always the possibility of renewal, a chance to learn from our mistakes, and to forge a path toward a more compassionate, understanding future. So, dear listener, as you take in this tale, let it serve as a reminder that every life is a complex tapestry of light and shadow, of joy intermingled with sorrow, and that even when we falter, we can always choose to rise again. Liana's journey, with all its twists and turns, is a testament to the fact that we are all, in our own way, works in progress, fragile beings striving to find our place in a world that often seems unforgiving. And while the scars of betrayal may never fully fade, they can become the marks of our resilience, the symbols of our ability to learn, to forgive, and to love more deeply than we ever thought possible. This is the story of Liana, a mysterious, enigmatic soul whose missteps caused irreparable pain, whose actions once cast long shadows over a family that had always prided itself on unity and trust. Yet, through the crucible of her own making, she discovered that true transformation comes not from denying one's flaws, but from confronting them head-on, with courage and humility. Her tale is one of hard-earned lessons, of tears shed in quiet corners, and of the slow, sometimes agonizing, process of rebuilding what has been broken. And in that process, she found not only redemption for herself, but also a new way to heal the hearts of those who had once been wounded by her choices. May Liana's story inspire us all to cherish the fragile bonds of family, to forgive when we can, and to never lose hope in the possibility of change, even when the path ahead is shrouded in darkness. For it is in our willingness to face our own imperfections, to acknowledge the hurt we have caused, and to strive for a better tomorrow, that we truly begin to understand the profound and transformative power of forgiveness. And in that understanding, we find the strength to move forward, to rebuild, and to embrace the promise of a new day, where every sunrise is a reminder that no matter how deep the night, the light of redemption will always find a way to shine through. This, dear listener, is the saga of Liana, a woman whose journey from betrayal to redemption is etched in the hearts of those who witnessed it, a poignant reminder that while our past may cast long shadows, it is our choices, our actions, and our capacity to love again that ultimately define who we are.